Good evening, everyone. Most people who survive clinical death describe their experiences as peaceful, visions of a warm, heavenly light, comforting beings, and a profound sense of happiness. But there are rare, chilling cases where individuals recount something very different. A journey into hell itself. Tonight, we dive into the terrifying accounts of people who claim they have been to hell and return to tell their stories. The first story is The Fiery Ocean, Thomas Wells' Encounter. Thomas Wells, a millwright's assistant from Oregon, was working on a future sawmill when he slipped and fell from a height into the water below, striking several beams on his way down. Several workers witnessed the accident, and rescue efforts were launched immediately. After nearly an hour, they managed to revive Thomas, but during that hour, his soul had traveled far beyond the earthly realm. Thomas found himself standing at the edge of a vast, fiery ocean. The flames stretched endlessly across the horizon, boiling and crackling without a sound. He watched, frozen in horror, as countless figures moved along the shores of the fire. Among them, he recognized a boy he once knew, a childhood friend who had died of cancer. Yet the boy, like the others, seemed lost in a silent, confused trance. Thomas realized with overwhelming dread he was imprisoned here, with no way out. He thought, if I had known such a place existed, I would have lived my life very differently. At that moment, a radiant figure appeared, Jesus Christ himself. Thomas's heart filled with hope. Yet when Jesus passed by, he said nothing. He only cast a long, sorrowful glance over his shoulder. That glance alone was enough to send Thomas's soul hurtling back into his broken body. He awoke to the sound of his rescuers' voices and the blinding lights of the real world. This extraordinary account is recorded in Maurice Rawlings's book, Beyond Death's Door, alongside other terrifying reports of souls who found themselves in hell. The second story, The Woman and the Beast. Another story speaks of a woman who suffered a massive heart attack. As her body weakened, she felt herself separate from it, only to find herself in a dark, oppressive chamber. There, towering above her, was an unspeakably monstrous creature, surrounded by twisted goblins and grotesque imps. They leered at her, mocking and clawing at her legs. The beast lured her forward, and despite her terror, she was powerless to resist. She passed through dark tunnels, hearing the agonized moans of unseen souls. Finally, she arrived at a more horrific place, a realm swarming with monstrous beings more hideous than anything she could have imagined. Just as despair consumed her, the giant beast waved her away. She felt mercy for the first time, and woke up gasping in her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. The third story, A Descent Through the Tunnel, A Man's Escape from the Pit. Another patient, suffering from severe pancreatitis, slipped into unconsciousness. He too began moving through a long, dark tunnel, floating weightlessly through the void. The tunnel was damp, cold, and filled with nauseating smells of decay. He couldn't recall every detail, but fragments haunted him. Demonic figures with twisted, half-human faces, speaking in guttural tongues, laughing cruelly at him. In despair, he cried out, "Jesus, save me." Immediately, a man in shining white robes appeared, radiating a blinding light. The man's presence filled him with peace and with a silent command: live differently. He remembered little else, as if his mind mercifully erased the horror from his memory. The next story, the testimony of Kenneth Hagin. Kenneth Hagin, who would later become a famous preacher, also had a terrifying brush with the afterlife in 1933. Suffering from a rare heart condition, Kenneth's heart stopped. His soul separated from his body and began to descend into a vast abyss. The deeper he fell, the darker it became. He couldn't even see his own hand in front of his face. The heat grew unbearable, the darkness suffocating. At the bottom, Kenneth found himself before a giant, flaming gateway, the entrance to hell itself. A searing force began to pull him forward, as if he were a piece of iron drawn to a magnet. Near the entrance, a monstrous figure reached out to grab him. But before it could pull him further, a thunderous voice, God's voice, commanded the demon to release him. An unseen force yanked Kenneth back upwards. He re-entered his body through his mouth, gasping awake to the astonished cries of his grandmother, who had been sure he was dead. The next story, 3 Hours in Hell, a soul's cleansing. In Orthodox Christian tradition, similar tales are found. One man, tormented by illness, prayed fervently for God to relieve his suffering. An angel appeared and offered him a choice: endure 1 more year of earthly pain, or spend 3 hours in hell to cleanse his soul. The man chose hell, but when he arrived, he realized his mistake. Hell was a place of crushing darkness, unbearable heat, and ceaseless screams. Malicious spirits swirled around him. The anguish of the damned was so overwhelming that he believed he had been there for an eternity. Finally, after what seemed like endless torment, the angel returned. Only an hour had passed. The man begged to return to Earth, and he did, choosing to endure his remaining earthly suffering without complaint. The next story, the reality of hell. According to Christian belief, hell is not merely a place of punishment. It is a realm where souls are separated from God, tormented by their own guilty consciences and unfulfilled desires. The addict suffers eternal withdrawal. The drunkard experiences an unquenchable thirst. The glutton starves without satisfaction. The lustful burn with desire, but find no relief. Hell was not created as a torture chamber, but for a sinful soul, even the presence of divine light can be agonizing. Trapped in darkness, unable to embrace God's grace, they writhe in spiritual pain. The next story, Reflections. The visions of hell are horrifying, but they also serve as a powerful warning. They remind us to examine our lives, our choices, and our priorities. They urge us to seek goodness, mercy, and redemption before it's too late. Because perhaps the scariest truth is this: hell isn't just somewhere else. It might be waiting, just on the other side. Thank you for listening. If you dare to learn more, subscribe, like, and stay close to the light.